could when I was small, and it's so picturesque. Looking through the crystal ball, can you picture this?
Ciao and welcome to Geo's Paintbrush, where 5 minutes is all it takes to be blown away by one of the world's greatest artists. In today's show, we'll cross the Atlantic once again, this time to the Republic of Ireland, to consider a powerful sculpture in bronze by the noted Irish artist Edward Delaney, whose Famine Memorial, 1967, located in Dublin's beautiful St. Stephen's Green, brings an El Greco-style expressionism to an exploration of human suffering in its physical and its spiritual dimensions. Thanks for joining us. Originally a medieval commons used for grazing, occasional executions, and the placement of a leper colony, Dublin's St. Stephen's Green is now a beautiful 22-acre park in the heart of Ireland's capital city. The green was enclosed in 1664, and by the end of the 18th century, it was surrounded by beautiful Georgian homes by the English, for whom Dublin served as the empire's second city. With that unique combination of good humor and deadly serious defiance that only the Irish can muster, Dublin's Irish inhabitants, knowing how the English valued unity and conformity in their neoclassical architecture, took to painting their simple white doors red, blue, green, yellow, any color they can get their hands on, a delightful means of adding a little touch of the Irish to all that stately, grave Georgian splendor in the neighborhood surrounding the green. When one steps off the street into St. Stephen's Green, the bustle of the city, the sounds of the city, seem to soften to a pleasant, gentle hum. The park is a natural, quiet oasis located just steps from the southern entry to Grafton Street, Dublin's central pedestrian thoroughfare, with countless shops, restaurants, pubs, and tourists. In late December of 2010, while visiting Dublin City to ring in the new year, we strolled what locals call simply the Green many times, as it was located conveniently along our short walk from the Fitzwilliam Guest House north, past Foley's Pub, to Grafton, and then on to Trinity College and O'Connell Street. The Green, in the span of just 4 days, provided us with a crash course in Irish weather, offering a lush, magical backdrop for bright sunshine one day, biblical rain the next, and even a rare Irish snowstorm on New Year's Eve that painted the Green white on New Year's Day. The park also offers visitors a number of interesting public sculptures, including 2 pieces by modern Irish sculptor Edward Delaney, 1930-2009, whose expressionist style reveals simultaneously physical and spiritual truths, big truths at the core of what it means to be Irish, and yet truths with resonance far beyond the shores of Erin's green land. Delaney's supersized sculpture of 18th century Irish rebel Wolfe Tone, 1967, is so original. Tone was a leader of the failed 1798 rebellion against British rule, and Delaney's 10-foot-tall rendering, boldly defiant in rags and placed against an imposing 16-foot-high wall made mostly of narrow granite blocks resting on their short sides, certainly enlarges the man and the spirit that kindled his work to mythological proportions. But for me, it is Delaney's Famine Memorial, 1967, located on the other side of the granite wall, that demonstrates most clearly Delaney's unique approach to sculpting. Interestingly, the wall serves as a barrier between Wolfe Tone and the famine piece, 2 essential elements historically of the Irish experience, rebellion and hunger, with a wall between them, as if one cannot see clearly how the two are related. The elongated, unnaturalistic figures Delaney creates to communicate famine work on at least 2 levels. First, there is the physical reality of the emaciation of the forms, the people and the dog, along with an ethereal thinness, a lack of stability. Note that one figure supports himself with a stick while another sits on the ground. These figures, barely recognizable as human and domesticated pet, are literally clinging to life, to a form we find familiar. And then there are the spiritual truths the figures suggest, including the inherently human desire to provide aid and comfort to those in need, even when one finds himself in the same desperate circumstances. Note the scant figure far right, head hung lower than is ordinarily physically possible, providing water for the seated figure. The other spiritual truth I see in this sculpture is the poignant figure far left, reaching toward the heavens, in despair, unable to endure further suffering, seeking intervention, or perhaps somewhere in between life and death, already departing the physical world, leaving the others behind to carry on. One aspect of this figure that leads me to believe he is perhaps otherworldly is the remarkable balance exhibited, especially when in such an emaciated state. This is the only figure that does not appear so weak, so fragile, so forlorn. Even the dog, barely recognizable as a dog, is so thin that its spine is showing through its skin, and its head, deformed and elongated, bows as if praying for mercy. And there's an odd heaviness to the dog, in spite of its boniness, a weight, as if it has become a permanent feature of the cold stone floor, although still resting loyally beside the seated figure, even in its misery, clinging to its earthly role. When I consider the elongated forms Delaney employs in Famine, I am reminded of the way in which El Greco, the Spanish Renaissance master, elongated human figures in his paintings, always stretching skyward, as if emphasizing their hunger for and commitment to the spiritual rather than earthly world. Perhaps Delaney is suggesting in Famine that there is more than one kind of hunger, more than one kind of yearning for sustenance, and that the tragedy of great physical hunger and suffering, as a human experience, also includes a type of spiritual hunger or craving, for answers, for mercy, for intervention, for deliverance. And as is the case with El Greco, Delaney's expressionist style, focusing not on creating a realistic portrait of his subject, but on capturing the complexity and emotion, the whole of the experience, its essential truths taking precedence over naturalistic shape and form, offers the viewer a more powerful artistic experience, generating an emotional response, sympathy, empathy, sadness, humility, maybe even shame, that a more realistic image, especially in the modern world, where graphic images are so prevalent, could not produce. From 1846 to 1849, the Great Famine, or the Great Hunger as many Irish call it, since food was actually available in the country, but not given to the Irish who needed it desperately, caused an estimated 750,000 deaths from starvation, while just as many Irish fled their homes, never to return, for America and other nations. The social injustice and the suffering that resulted from it was of a colossal scale, and the impact of that tragedy on the history of the Irish people is far-reaching, even here in the 21st century. On St. Stephen's Green, about 125 years after the hunger, in the bustling capital of a proud and independent Irish republic, Edward Delaney offered a moving reminder of man's inhumanity to man, exploring not just the physical dimensions of human suffering, but the spiritual repercussions as well, universal, powerful, insightful, and relevant anywhere on this earth where human beings in dire circumstances search for comfort, meaning, and deliverance from despair. Grazie mille e ciao.
I can picture it like I could when I was small, and it's so picturesque, looking through the crystal ball.